important thing is that we are all here, and I appreciate you guys all showing up. And if you are willing, I'd love to see your smiling faces on camera. That'd be great. First off, I just want to kind of acknowledge the elephant in the room. This has been it's been a terrible week, and I just want to just feel very sad about what's going on in the world, and a lot of heaviness around all this stuff that tends to be appropriately distracting to these concerns of kind of life and career here, those of us mostly in the West. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and it's I'm sure for all of you, it's been a really rough few days. Having said that, I look forward to hearing from all of you and learning from all of you and sharing some of the experience and wisdom that we can provide to each other to help support our careers and livelihoods as we advance in age and wisdom. That's what I want to kind of lead off with a report about a new study that has been put out by a nonprofit called Generation that was founded a few years ago by a really visionary woman named Mona Morshed. And it really is a global organization that is focused on employment for marginalized peoples of all stripes, including people who are aging. And they have a new report out on mid-career and called the Mid-Career Opportunity. And I've acknowledged, I think, on LinkedIn. I'm going to keep sharing it around, but I just want to read a stat from the report, which I think is very telling. And one of the questions that they asked was whether employers would be interested in hiring people of different age cohorts. And I'm going to pull this tab over into another side of the screen so I can read it. Hold on. Just lost it. Oh, there we go. So nearly 40% of employers said they would hire someone aged 20 to 29. Nearly half, 47%, indicated that they would hire from 30 to 44. Whereas just 1 in 3, 35%, said they would hire someone between aged 45 to 54. This lowers to just 13% of people who say they would hire someone aged, and it's even lower, 13% for people aged 55 to 65. So ageism continues, guys. What can I say? It is a persistent problem that we are all facing, and I'm sure that many of you who are on the call today have experienced this, are experiencing this now, and we're here to support the end of ageism eventually. I tend to believe that the demographics are in our favor. They're kind of running out of younger people when you think about this age bubble that's existing. So people are aging. They're more older people. I think the number is something like, there'll be more people over 65 than under 25 by 2030, 2035. But enough of my rant. What's going on there? Please, someone jump in. Why are you here today?
I'm happy to jump in and kick it off since it's my first time attending this. And I've been following you, John, for a number of years now. I'm always a fan
Vice versa.
of what you're always a fan of your mission and what you're doing. I'd like to kick off with a sort of being rude and asking a question to yours. And that is, why do you think, or why does the group think that experience is being so undervalued?
Well, I'll jump in because I have a theory about this. And that is that experience is undervalued because people without experience don't understand the value of experience. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to sit in an interview with a younger person. I'm not going to put an age number on it because ageism goes both ways, right?
Mhm.
But someone who is younger, who is interviewing you, doesn't really understand what experience means. For them, it has a much more limited window and a much less rich meaning and sense of kind of the word that comes up for me is encompassment. In other words, this sense of everything that you know and can do because of your experience, the perspective that you have because of your experience, it's just not part of their vocabulary. It's like trying to describe a three-dimensional space to a two-dimensional being.
So is this a sense of intimidation, that the fear of I don't know what I don't know?
I think, yes, practically that there's a lot of that. There's a lot of sense of, here's this older person coming in. They've worked so many more years. It's this black box. I don't know what to make of them. I don't quite know how to relate. So there's a lot of cultural disconnect, I think, that we experience because, there's a lot of confirmation bias going on. If you poll, and this has been done, you poll younger hiring managers and recruiters, well, they want to hire people like them. It's kind of, it kind of makes sense when you think about social human behavior. But in a multi-generational workforce, we talk about diversity a lot, but we don't seem to somehow include age in the diversity equation. And I have a course on LinkedIn called Managing Multiple Generations. And one of the things I point out at the beginning is that only 8% of diversity initiatives in American corporations include age as a diversity factor. So
Wow.
what does that tell you?
I often find that the ageism, my obstacles have been related to communication, that the potential employee or employer rather, or the hiring managers, quote unquote, they don't really know how to communicate very well. The interpersonal communication is very lacking there.
Yep, that's often the case. There's a lot of training gaps, I think, that we find in many of these departments because people are promoted for whatever reason, right? They get into these positions. And I would say that another factor here about hiring is that nobody likes to hire for a position. It's not kind of what you were, for most people, it's not what you signed up for when you agreed to do this job, that you would have to write up a job description, post the position, interview people for it. We don't have the skills. We're not taught what to look for. And we end up hiring people that we like. So, Andres, thank you for that. Tell me what's going on with you and why are you on the call today?
Well, I'm on the call because, as I said at the top, I've been following along, getting your newsletters, seeing your posts on LinkedIn. And from the moment that you and I met till now, I've aged into your demo. And so I've become curious about, and for the folks here, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have my own company, and I have for the past, well, forever. I've always been an entrepreneur. Just this particular company's been around now for about 5 years. And I'm part of my remit is hiring and managing teams of creatives and production folks to execute, to embed with marketing teams to execute on brand strategy and all of the derivative deliverables that come with that remit. So actual production and B2B comms or B2C comms, et cetera. And so I'm always looking for best to suit teams. And what I look for is capability. I'm never looking for anything else, right? So it's the best person for that position, period. And if you're that person, then great, you get the job. And so it's always interesting to me to delve into conversations about bias in the workplace. One, because I don't have it. Two, because I deal with enterprise marketing teams that are hiring me to help them execute. So I want to be more sensitive to this bias that I'm not necessarily aware of. And three, I don't have the experience that many of you on this call have of having worked inside of an organization, developed a capability intra-organization, and now looking for either a horizontal or a vertical move into another organization or another skill set. And so for all of those reasons, I'm on this call today.
Good. Well, welcome. Thank you for showing up. And let me ask you a question about the work that you do. One, from the point of view of working with clients, are you noticing, or maybe it's still too early because you're still too young, a difference in the way you are perceived coming in to bid for a job, for example? And on the other side, in terms of the people that you're bringing in, the talent that you're bringing in to do these jobs, what are you noticing about skill sets and perceptions?
So there's there's low-hanging fruit in that question, and that has to do with technology and the different communication cadences that new technologies are building into contemporary and ascending generations, right? So not just what people use to communicate, but how they're doing it and what the expectations are in that communication, right? That's just the low-hanging fruit. We're all aware of it. You know, it's my daily stream of comms are Slack, WhatsApp, text, email, phone calls, LinkedIn messages, and I think it stops there. I'm not on TikTok. Kind of refuse to be, at least until I can't refuse to be any longer. But that's just what it is. And then, you know, again, it's my personal belief that the best person for the best job wins the day, right? And so I'm a little bit blind to any other considerations.
But in terms of the people that you're working for, the client population,
sure.
What's your sense of how they're hiring and how they're looking at you? Are you seeing anything kind of between the cracks, perhaps, where you're seeing there's a potential?
I don't know how helpful this is to folks on this call, because I have, you know, my title is CEO and founder. And so when I jump on a call, I don't know if people are reacting to the title, or my age, or what I'm there to do, or how I'm there to communicate it, or sorry, how I communicate it.
Right. Well,
and
part of
so
the reason I ask, let me. So I have a friend who is in the media space, who is has for years had a post-production house and an agency, and he definitely over the last 5-10 years has seen a tremendous fall off in his business, and he attributes a good percentage of this to ageism, to this idea that, well, if you're a 55, 60-year-old agency owner, you can't deliver content that we're going to like.
okay. It's a loaded question. So I disagree with the what's implied there. I think that any age can deliver. It's just about creativity, right? And sensitivity and curiosity and openness, and you know, that doesn't have an age associated with it. And ultimately, experience is very helpful in not just being able to consider what the brief is and the scope of the deliverable, but also in how you manage the teams through execution. The symptoms of your friend's current circumstance, I think, is industry wide. Media Arts Lab just laid off, I think, 30 people, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but you know, I know that agencies are laying people off, right? That is news that's very well known, and a lot has to do with how it is that brands are choosing to go about executing on marketing. Brands are hiring in-house. Brands are reaching out to production companies that can offer some creative. There's a myriad of different reasons
Getting into the
why
weeds
this
here,
would
yeah.
why this is happening in the agency world that that I wouldn't necessarily just attribute to age.
The age, yeah. Let's widen the conversation out a little bit. I appreciate your reflection and perspective, but I'd love to hear other people's experience of, again, why are you on the call today, and how can we help?
John, I think one of the issues with ageism and younger hiring managers, and it goes to what Andre said in terms of he always wants to pick the best person for the task or for the job.
Hey, Bob, I just want to interrupt you. Do you have a light that you can shine in our face
I
so we can
don't,
see you?
but
You're
I will try.
completely, you're
know,
like the guy on the news who doesn't want to be.
Yeah, I try to be
identity
incognito
shower.
as much as possible. That'll help a little, but not
A
much.
little bit.
I think the difficulty is when you're dealing with someone who is older than you are, and in some cases, not insignificantly older than you are, to fill a position, there's the concern on the hiring person's part of not so much are you knowledgeable, but are you current with what's going on now? Are you going to know how to use WhatsApp, or are you going to be, up on TikTok or this or that current social media platform? And so I think there's really this question of yes, you may be knowledgeable, but you're not knowledgeable, you're not current with what's going on. And I think one of the issues that we have to work against or somehow demonstrate, both in how we present ourselves and how we talk with people, is how current are we? How up to date are we, both in our skills and in our in whatever industry it is, whatever the industry issues or trends are. And I think that can be a real problem, because we all tend to fall back on, well, when I did something similar, we did it this way.
Right.
And that may no longer be the way.
Yeah. I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear from other people as well on this topic or on their experiences.
So I go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Susan. And we'll take Renee.
I agree with everything else everyone said. I'm here because I'm actually trying to transition from finance into more socially impact area in an educational institution. So I'm switching to an area that's sort of youth driven. But I think for me, what I've found is that sometimes people are afraid to hire somebody with more experience than they have, because I might then take their job. And so ageism isn't so much my age, it's more like job security on their part. Why, I could do more than they could. I could do their job. So that's one thing I definitely see. And also companies, want to hire and grow people. And so they want to have people kind of start and then have their career blossom. And sometimes in, my case, I'm not going to be there forever. It's not going to be, they're going to put a lot of time and effort into training me, getting me in the culture. And I don't know how long I'm really going to be there. I mean, they might think that. I don't know that they think that. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of things that I see when I'm out there.
Renee, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, in part what she was saying, but the other part was that what I noticed is, like in the financial services, and then when some of these entrepreneurials that sell their training on how to create businesses or how to be not consultant, but more like to start businesses. The biggest thing that seems to be that there is the AI, and using that in place of if you get stuck, here's to help you with your ideas and that sort of thing. But, a lot of genius comes from not something that everybody else knows. It comes from connections. But it seems to me like they have, for the financial services, you know, they've cut out a lot of jobs in a lot of areas. They've done, and then also with this other, with these entrepreneurial groups that are training people to have their own businesses, they're using that on the side now. This is the first year they're using AI in 2 different groups. I mean, I think Tony Robbins was one, and Marissa Murgatroyd. And what they did is that, so they're using the AI as a big component, like to take it off of them. And so I don't think Marissa and Tony are really taking down people, you know, kind of cutting back on people. But I think it is definitely happening in the financial services, which could be in other areas as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, AI is certainly a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down.
But I don't think it's fully replaceable. I just think that
Right.
people don't really know yet.
Right. Yeah, I think we're definitely in early days on that. I think, but what, and I do want to kind of go wider on the conversation, but to Susan's point, you know, you're talking about some myths that are very hard to break. And as you can imagine, I'm dealing with this every day in terms of the work I'm doing with my clients. A few tips on this for me is around particularly the question of longevity in the job. You know, the average tenure of a person in the job these days is around 4 years. That's across all ages. It's less for Gen Z, younger millennials. So the idea that you would be concerned about, or that anyone would be concerned about you leaving and not staying, is a myth. It's a myth. It's a complete misunderstanding of the way the working world works. As an older worker, you may want to underscore the fact that you have a much greater chance of staying for a longer period in the job than a younger worker, because you come to the job with greater intentionality. You're there because you want to be there in that job. You're not there to use it as a stepping stone. And that goes back to your first point, which is you have more experience, you're there to take their job. This is a very real fear that people have. So I advise people to really address this head on and to be very, very clear going in about what your intentions are, and that your intentions are not to take their job. You're not using this job as a stepping stone for something. You're there because this is the job you want to do. And they may say, well, you know, but you could be running this company. Why don't you want to be running this company? Because in their mind, that's how they think. They think, oh, you rise up through the ladder and someone else coming in with that experience, well, they're competition. They must want to go for that top job, whatever that top job might be. And again, you have to deconstruct this for them and say, no, no, no. At this point in my career, I've done that, been there, done that. I'm actually much more interested now in getting into the weeds with this particular role and explain why and explain what you bring to it. So there is a way, I believe, of re-educating people away from their habitual biases that they're bringing into those interviews, if you can get into the interview.
But once you have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Once you have the job, though, I was in a situation because I had had something happen, and then I came back into a role. And one of the things that I think they thought I was young, certainly younger, but they were more concerned because I was far more experienced, and they were concerned. They didn't help me. Like everybody else got help, support, and I found it very difficult to get the help I needed. And sometimes I couldn't quantify what exactly I needed yet.
Yes.
And so that was that was probably the most challenging part of that, was being in a banking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those situations, regardless of what the field that you're in, if you're in a particular team, company, culture, whatever that might be, which is making assumptions about you and then not quite getting or feeling comfortable, or they don't have a structure or set place for you to get the help that you need, then you have to go outside, right? You're going to have to get it someplace else.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was during the time of COVID, so which
yeah.
made it a little more challenging for
a little
me.
bit more
But
difficult.
that's a good point, though. I
But
mean,
that is what we have to do.
personality-wise, I could have done more had I had a little more fluidity.
Yeah, I mean, I think this brings up something for me, which is really pervasive and a very big issue that a lot of people kind of getting into their 50s don't quite appreciate, which is that we have to do more, unfortunately. And we have to do more because more is expected of us because we're older. And I think on a certain level, people think, well, you're supposed to have it all figured out by now, right? And so there's this assumption about either we don't have the skills, we're out of date, we're out of touch, or that we have too many skills, too much experience, we're untouchable, and no one feels comfortable asking us a question or criticizing our work or whatever that might be. So we have to work double time to discern where these gaps are, one way or the other, and fill them proactively and constructively, and be Mother Teresa and Gandhi about it in terms of our neutrality and acceptance and compassion and all that stuff. It's a tall order, but here we are.
It's sort of like beginning again, in a
is.
way. I mean, because I worked really hard at the very beginning, and I put in a lot of energy and a lot of time. I mean, not that I didn't just recently, but anyway, so I'll be quiet now.
No. I appreciate your contribution. I think that's great. And I'm curious again, kind of looking at the group over here, for some other contributions and other situations that people are experiencing.
John Dagg's got his hand up.
Yes.
Thank you. Adding to that conversation, one of the things I've done in the last couple of weeks is an introspection of what job do I really want? And one of the things that I have done is threaded a compelling story why I want to have the job I want. And people come to me and say, but you seem to be overqualified. And I said, listen, I have had those jobs. I'm not interested in those jobs because I know the scenario that it involves being there. Sometimes I use the expression, the juice is all worth the squeeze, but depends on the person. So I started this week looking at jobs that I really want, have had honest conversations with the first screener, because once they see me, I cannot hide my gray hair, right? And my wrinkles. And they asked me, so why do you want this job? I says, this is the job that I miss having. I really enjoyed it. It's not about the money anymore, because among friends, I can tell people financially, I don't have to work. That's the fortunate thing. I'm working because I like to work.
Right.
And I told them, this is the job. And these are the reasons why, the 5, 10, 12 reasons why I want that job and why I am looking for the job. Once I did that introspection, discussed it with my spouse on what sacrifices can be made, or what, not in terms of financial, but sacrifices in terms of continuing to work, imposing a stricter calendar, because I want to be an individual contributor. I really enjoy being in front of the customer. And those things, people look at me and said, but you've done that already. Wouldn't you be tired? I said, no, I truly enjoy knocking on doors. I truly enjoy delivering projects to customers. And I had to thread the compelling story for my audience to realize that, yes, I'm older. Yes, I carry glasses. But sometimes I joke, I said, sometimes old age and treachery beats youth and enthusiasm, right? And they laugh about it. And
how is the strategy working? Because this is the strategy that I advocate. Absolutely. You're a poster child for me and my program. How's it going?
Hey, like I said, I started this week, and I have had two recruiters. Actually, I talked to a recruiter that I didn't know and say, listen, these are my credentials. Where can you place me first, right? What's your first impression? And I started talking to some people and said, this is what And I told him what I wanted. And the guy said, I could place you immediately now in international business development because you speak the languages, have worked in many countries, and you have expressed a desire to do it. And you have a compelling story that supports your desire. So one recruiter that I talked to, he says, you know what, I'm going to recommend you to this other recruiter on my team because I think he's looking for somebody like that. And I'm going to explain to him that to overlook the experience and no need to dumb down the resume, just sell it as a plus. And I had one this morning for an industry I shouldn't even be knocking on doors, but they found me after I started putting the message out there that I want to be an individual contributor. And they worked hard at convincing me that I could move to another industry because the things that I wanted to do as an individual contributor. Yes, I started my own companies. I've had success. I've had failure. But I'm reaching the point in my life, opposite to Andres, I don't want to build anything anymore. I want to enjoy something that I can do, and I don't have to do it for myself or build something for myself. I don't want to spend the next 5 years with the heavy lifting that requires to build a new company. Can I do that? Yes, of course, but I think I have more emotional, physical, spiritual rewards by doing what I want to do than rather doing what I'm good at. So it's one of those.
Well, I would argue that the fact that you want to do this makes you good at it. And when the guy was saying, why do you want to be knocking on doors or whatever? Aren't you tired of that? What he's getting is that it's a shit job, and people are trying to get out of it and use it as a stepping stone. How valuable to find someone like you who actually wants to do that job. And I think this goes back to Susan's question about screening and applicability. If they can kind of get the value of this equation,
Exactly,
where you have the experience and you actually want to do this job that maybe not a lot of other people are going to do or do well or do for a long period of time, that's gold, right? They can't pay you enough. They can't find anyone to do this. You're priceless to them.
and
That's the mindset that we need to start cultivating.
And not for
me, it all
bragging,
goes
but
back
at
to
the end
what
of
you
the
did, which is you figured out specifically the
Yes.
story, and now you've taken that story out. And if for all of us, if we can find that compelling story, and kind of trace the breadcrumbs about why that story works, why you're the right person for that story, then people are going to kind of start, as your recruiter did, he passed you on to another recruiter, and that's how the network starts to work.
Yeah, everybody was looking at me at VP, so I took my VP titles or ownership titles out and I dumbed it down, started getting a lot of traction, but I didn't have the compelling story.
I wouldn't say dumb it down. You focused in on what you wanted to do, and you're representing yourself in the context of what you want to do. It's not about VP or this or whatever. It's about the role that you want, and demonstrating how your experience, however much that experience is, focuses on enabling you to do that job best.
I came to the realization. I came to the realization of that introspection because since 1998, through our church ministry, we have a jobs ministry. I've been mentoring, coaching, and even my former employees, I've helped them move in their career path. And then I realized that I was not doing the things I did for them. And once I did it for myself, it was not a moment of a high. It became one of those, you know what? I am really comfortable. The things that I want to have for myself, the flexibility of not working a Friday or taking a couple of days off here and there, that doesn't hurt anybody but myself, no problem.
Right.
So that has been, to follow up with Renee's conversation, those are the things that where ageism, yes, I've had European companies contact me to see if I can build their business in the US for them. And I've had great telephone conversations. The moment we do a face-to-face is how old are you? Right?
which
And in
they
Europe, they
can't
can still
by
ask
the
you
way.
your marital status, your age.
Right. They're not
when,
allowed to ask that.
yeah. And last week, I remember clearly this recruiter wanted to know when I graduated from college. And I said, I used to be a diesel mechanic. I didn't go to college, kind of jokingly.
Right.
And they said, and you got to this level? I said, yeah, because I'm a good learner. And still, it was obvious in their expression that
Hey, you're not gonna convince everybody, but you just
Exactly.
have to convince the
But-
few people who get it. And you actually don't want to try to convince the people who don't get it, because what's the point?
Yeah,
There are enough people out there who do get it.
and that's the rationale, because it's easy to wallow in the pity fest of why me, why is it that I'm a problem, what am I doing wrong? And I realized it's not me, it's them. Good point, John. Thanks.
Thank you. Lorinda, you have your hand up.
Yes, this is only like my fourth Zoom call, so
In ever.
yes, ever.
Fantastic.
Well, I just got laid off from my child care job that I thought I was gonna work in until I got really old and couldn't work with children anymore.
Right.
But it was a child care at a church. And now I have to find another job because I'm only 58, and I don't really want to retire. I'm still young,
Yep.
And so finding a job, I'm finding it really hard to know the process. I'm listening to Andrew LaCivita, and he's got a program, and I got money to live on for a while, but I have to pay rent and feed myself and all that stuff.
Yep.
So I really don't know if I should buy his program or what I should do,
Right.
because I feel like I'm floundering and trying to tread water. And
I know who he is. I don't know much about his program. I would
oh, it's
recommend-
excellent. He's got everything.
Yeah. I would recommend that if you that you really want to start with your network. You really want to start with the people that you know, the people that you knew in your job and through your
That's
job.
I don't know a lot of people. That's my problem. I
Right.
was a homemaker before I got my job. I had it for like a year, and then they laid me off. I'm really not fired, but I can't
Right.
just be laid off for months.
Right.
I have to
Right.
support myself.
Right. Well, the people who you worked for, so you have a good relationship with that organization, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So do you have any relationships there that you trust enough to be able to ask for some guidance and information about perhaps other organizations that are providing the same kind of service that you were engaged in, and get a list of other companies that you could be approaching? Do you have a
Well,
resume?
It needs reworking because it was only a part-time job.
Yeah.
Because I have asthma, but I'm on a new medicine, and
Mhm.
and I'm doing better with that medicine. But
The other thing I would do is check out your local community college, because many times local community colleges will have career resources available to help you put your resume together, do some basic kind of career counseling around other companies that you could be approaching and how to do that, how to do interviews and all that.
well, I want to do administrative assistance work, which
Mhm.
I just put an email into Outlook so I can learn that.
Right.
And I mean, LinkedIn has certificates, but that costs money too. And
Right. Well, there's a lot you can do on the free LinkedIn program, and you can still do some searching on LinkedIn and find companies in your area. So if you kind of search on, in your field, you'll come up with some companies, and I really would try to make some connections around locally where you can meet people and kind of broaden your scope out around where you could be working and how to get your resume to these companies.
Okay. I have a transportation problem too.
Okay,
I have an
the-
electric bike, but I know if I have to travel on the bus for 5 days a week, that's not gonna work. I could do it every other day, but not
right.
5 days a week. Is that-
the state you're in, the unemployment office will also likely have resources that will help in terms of job search.
Good point.
Oh. But I can't get unemployment. I only work part-time and I mean, I didn't even get any benefits.
Right.
I was just working there for money. That was it.
Well, you might still check in with the unemployment office because even though you may not qualify for unemployment, they are there to help counsel people and give them resources. So there are many resources available to you that social services in various ways will be able to provide. So if not unemployment, then what state are you in?
Florida.
You're in Florida.
I'm in Central Florida.
There's I'm sure an employment development branch of the government that you can connect with and find someone, tell them your situation, ask them to give you the resources that you should be contacting to help you. And I think certainly between the state, local community college resource, and I would just do a search online in your area for other employment, career-related organizations. There are a number of nonprofits that may be in a position to assist you and give you support and advice.
Okay.
But I would do that.
Okay. Thank
I would
you.
also check out your local library has a lot of free job search information, and it's a really good resource. Even if you can't get to the library, you can always go online, and that's a really good way to get learning courses for different things you said you wanted to learn. The library is an unbelievable resource, and most of it's free. So
hey, and Lorinda, may I also add to check out online AARP, because I know that they have just really started a core competency, if you will, for resources for the 50+ market in the job market. So check out AARP because they have a lot of resources as well too when it comes to job opportunities.
Oh, thank you, because I wasn't quite sure how to do that. Thank you.
So if you just go into Google and just put in AARP, it'll come up and you can click onto their website and browse through it, and a lot of resources. That's a great idea, Gwen. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Neil, good to see you.
Okay, had to take myself off mute. Good to see you, John. I seem to somehow like to transition into fields where people are so much younger than I am. It's just unreal how I do this. But what I try and do is block out the outside noise and really try to worry about what I can control. I know discrimination is out there. I know there's a lot of other things that I'm going up against. But I try not to let that affect me. What I do, though, is I try and take all this information and work on improving myself as a better candidate. I can't change people's minds, and I can't change how the job market is, but I can certainly learn new technology like AI. And I can certainly walk the walk and talk the talk with them, because I know that's one of the stigmas that people, and I am older than I want to be. Yeah, I'm over 60 and
You have plenty of time left.
I don't feel old. I'm learning AI. I know what it's like. And so I can have a conversation with people. And that's one of the big things. A lot of the people in my field, I'm networking and I'm talking to, and I don't know what they think, but I mean, they're certainly willing to treat me as a peer. Now, thankfully, I don't have a lot of gray hair, and I do have hair here, which, no offense to other people, but it helps me look younger, and I'm very thankful for that. But the other thing is I try not to say things and do things that will label me, as what the stereotypes are.
Right.
And, by hanging out per se, getting into a field where people are younger, I'm hoping that they are accepting of me, just trying to learn new things, and I just can't let the blankety blanks get me down.
Right. I think you're on the right track. I think the important thing is to really focus in on your value proposition and be useful. Figure out where what you know, what you've done fills a need, and then tailor your pitch to this combination of what you know, what you do well, and what's out there that can be benefited by your expertise.
And the people in my field that I'm talking to, I'm telling them when I'm talking, they go, wow, you really have a passion for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the heart. You got this, you got the experience. So and that's how I portray myself. And
so what's the biggest obstacle that you're encountering right now?
It's psychological. Looking at people like on LinkedIn, do I network with this person? If they're like, they finished school in 2017, 2018, it's like, oh, that is an issue that I have, and it's internal. It's like, oh boy, I feel like I'm talking to someone here who just got out in the real world. How are they going to accept me? That's the issue that I have.
Right.
And it's really a strange feeling that I have, because sometimes I'll reach out to people on LinkedIn that I haven't even spoken a word to, so I send them a cold invite.
Mm-hmm.
And after they accept, I'll ask them to have a conversation. I think part of it is they're just, I don't know about this, because
Right.
there was a gentleman, I think, who graduated from a school in 2017, and I was doing this, and I really think that he was taken back by that technique because he was so young,
Right.
per se. And the issue is, how do I inside say, forget about the age, just treat them as an individual. It doesn't matter when they graduate, but that's the issue that I'm having.
Right. I think it might be helpful. First of all, you want to create a context around your outreach. And this gets back to the idea of the value proposition. You're going to do a cold outreach to someone on LinkedIn. It's going to be helpful for them to understand why you're reaching out. And I think it's the etiquette of the LinkedIn lead generation, if you will, around the conversations that you have, is that you got to start small. You really have to inch your way into it. And I would recommend that before you actually ask for a conversation, that you get to know the person. And if you're going to reach out to them, you've looked at their profile, you want to tell them that the reason I'm reaching out to you is because of X, Y, or Z, or I see that we have these experiences in common, this background in common. You're working in a field that I'm interested in. I'd like to ask you some questions. And then let them get back to you and say, oh yeah, sure, I'd be happy to answer your questions. What questions do you have? And then start that dialogue
Okay.
in writing. back and forth, ease into it before you really get a sense of whether there's rapport there. Because ultimately what you're trying to do in this outreach is kind of triangulate where you fit, where you could fit. So the more conversations you have, that's great. The better you're going to be. But I would recommend that you kind of remind them, again, it's the same thing we're talking about your experience. For people who don't understand what experience is. If he's just out of school, you're right, he's not going to understand how this works. He's just not going to have that experience around conversations and interactions and building relationships and all that stuff that you know very well. So be that servant leader.
Okay.
And in the process of reaching out for your own value, for your own education, you may inspire that person and make them feel comfortable about communicating with you and willing to open up a little bit more than they would have, because now they kind of understand you a little bit better. They understand why you're communicating with them, and it makes sense, right? Because you have a question that they can understand, and you get into a good dialogue. And that's where you can build the nugget of something that could take you someplace. And then at the end of the day, you still have to know what it is that you're looking for. You know, like
Right.
Doug, who was, I think, brilliant at figuring this out, he had a really clear sense of what he wanted to do. And it was like this kind of like bang on the side of the head. It's like, I've been doing this for other people for so long, and I need to do this for myself. Really tailor that ultimately the ask that you're going for. But what it
Okay.
is that you do well. You're looking for an opportunity to do it. So you're looking for building conversations, building relationships with people who get you, who understand, and then they can, like those recruiters that were working with Doug, it's like, the light bulb goes off. Oh, I can place you in any number of companies. You want to take the same kind of approach.
Okay, thanks. That is really good advice about writing communication back and forth to make him feel comfortable. That's probably why I'm not getting the responses that I am. Thank you, John.
That may be.
Really,
Well,
really good. I'm going to start doing
yeah,
that right away.
Check back next month and let us know how you did.
Okay,
John-
absolutely.
John, one of the things that occurs to me,
Before I get you, Bob, I wanted to get, is it kink or sink?
It's Cenk.
Chink, great.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for being on the call. Tell me how I can help you out today and the group.
Okay, so I'll try to keep it short. I'm calling in from Europe. I'm based in Switzerland. So a quick introduction. So I'm 42 years old, and I've been working for the one of the tobacco companies for the last 18 years in quality and supply chain departments mainly. And as a result of the global restructuring in 2023, I found myself unemployed. So, and the situation here in Switzerland, we have the pharmaceuticals and the watchmaking. So I'm applying to these companies for junior roles, since I don't have any experience related to the industry. But in terms of age and experience, I'm too senior for the junior roles that I apply. And my main aim is to get to know the industry and developing some knowledge of the industry. But I'm having this problem applying to junior roles with my profile. That's my issue. And why I'm on this call? Because I've been listening to some podcasts. I think it was the Find Your Dream Job, and I found your part super interesting, and that's the reason I'm on the call.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're here. And I have some thoughts about this, because it's a really interesting, uncomfortable position to be kind of too experienced for the junior, not experienced yet for the senior, and particularly changing industries. But you have a skill set. You know, supply chain is global, right? The skills around supply chain are portable. So I would expect that from an operations supply chain perspective, there are ways that you can communicate what the kind of the high points of your achievements have been. And I haven't looked at your LinkedIn, but one of the things that I advise people on with their LinkedIn is to, in their about section, talk about not just kind of the listing of the kind of the prose resume, as it were, the bio, but to really make a story out of it. And because you're going to land through your networking, because you want to build relationships with people who understand who you are, what your value is, and are in a position to say, I don't care that you don't know the watch industry or the pharma industry. You're a smart person, you have experience, you know supply chain, we have supply chain issues. We can train you up on the industry. That's not the issue. What we can't do is find a lot of people who have sufficient actionable supply chain operations experience. That conversation is not going to come from a job application, because when you're doing the job application, you're running up against all sorts of different criteria, people who fit that checklist better than you do. So you're going to be unfairly excluded from that conversation in the transactional nature of recruiting. But if you do this through relationship building, you're going to get a much better response. And in your about section, you have this opportunity to tell this story about why you do what you do, what you've learned, and to point out a couple of quick wins that you've had over the course of your experience, which they can then find more detail about below in your experience section, where you want to start angling that experience section. Even though you've been in the tobacco industry, you want to really stress the portable skills that you learned in those positions over those 18 years. So that someone who is coming in from another industry will say, well, yeah, they were in this industry, but look at all these portable skills. Look at all this stuff here, which gets you out of being pegged into something else. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, John.
Any questions about that? Anyone else have a question about that process? And then we'll get to you, Bob. Okay.
And the only point I was going to make in terms of a follow-up of a number of comments that people have made, and it's sort of a general marketing approach, but in a sense, aren't we marketing ourselves?
We are.
In
We are
this
all marketers now.
Particularly if you're reaching out to someone as a cold call, at least standard rule of thumb is you give before you receive.
There we go.
You want to be able to, if you reach out to someone, offer them something that you have, something that you know, something that you think they might find of interest. Just as you want to be a resource. And if you can prove yourself as a resource, then they're going to look, they may then ultimately look to you as, oh, here's somebody who can help us. Maybe in not in the job that they have advertised, but in something else, because you're never quite certain. I know I have lost I've lost the habit of doing it, but at one point, working with contacts within the industry that I work in, I had a list of people that I would periodically send articles or snippets of news clips to. I always ask permission. Is it okay if I send this? And generally people said that was fine, and you could do it on LinkedIn. You could do it by, it's more personal if you can send it to them directly. And from a personal standpoint, you never want to overwhelm them with stuff. Be careful in what you send. Yeah. But again, if you have something that you can offer someone, particularly if it relates to whatever industry they're in, you have to give before you can receive.
Great point. Yeah. We're going to have to wrap it up. I want to thank you, Bob, for that point, because I think it definitely relates directly back to what Tank was talking about. And the whole process of curating content on LinkedIn and engaging with your content on LinkedIn is a great way of doing that and giving out to your community. So I want to thank you all for being on the call this month, and we will be doing this again in November. So stay tuned for that, and you are all on my list now, so you'll be getting the announcement of that. And feel free to reach out to me directly in the interim if you've got a particular question or something came up on the call and you're kind of waking up tomorrow thinking, oh, I didn't ask that question. Feel free to reach out and connect with me on email or on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, and see you next month.